An unending vaccine tug-of-war has been going on between the centre and the states. While opposition states are crying hoarse over shortage, the Modi government has blamed the states for messing up their vaccine procurement policies. In this, it is you and I, the citizens of this country, who are suffering, having to wait endlessly for the one thing, the only thing that can protect us from COVID-19.
Vaccine politics peaks amidst the pandemic. The centre and opposition-ruled states are at war over the vaccine shortage. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal is most vocal and among the first to point fingers at the Modi government, claiming that the national capital has run out of injections. Kejriwal's barbs have provoked a sharp reaction from the BJP.
पिछले 4 दिनों से युवाओं के वैक्सीनेशन सेंटर बंद पड़े हैं। हमने केंद्र सरकार को लिखा है, लेकिन अभी तक वैक्सीन आई नहीं है। जब दुनिया के दूसरे देश अपने अपने लोगों को बड़े स्तर पे वैक्सीन लगा रहे थे, हम अपने लोगों की वैक्सीन लगाने की बजाय अपनी वैक्सीन दुनिया के दूसरे देशों को भेज रहे थे।
दिल्ली में जितने लोग वैक्सीनेट हुए हैं, उसके केवल 13% लोगों को अरविंद केजरीवाल जी ने अपने दम पे वैक्सीनेट किया है। 13% लोगों को वैक्सीनेट किया है, मगर 100% बार प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करके मतलब यहाँ राजनीति की।
The Congress is also training its guns at the centre. The party's UP in charge, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, leading the charge.
Why did our government export 6 crore vaccines between January and March 2021 while vaccinating only 3.5 crore Indians during the same period of time? The government of India owes the people of India answers. We have to ask them questions and they will have to answer to us.
A fuming BJP has fired back, blaming states for the vaccine mess.
20 करोड़ 1,61,350 वैक्सीन फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट भारत सरकार की ओर से राज्यों को दिया गया है। तो ये बहुत गलत बात है कि केंद्र राज्य को वैक्सीन नहीं दे रहा है, ये भ्रामक है।
In the middle of this slugfest, the centre has released data claiming massive vaccine wastage amidst the crunch. As per Health Ministry data, Jharkhand reported 37.3% vaccine wastage, while Chhattisgarh reported 30.2% wastage. The states have rejected the government's claim. Chhattisgarh claims vaccine wastage in the state is less than 1%.
केंद्र सरकार राजनीति कर रही है और इस प्रकार से भ्रामक खबरें नहीं देनी चाहिए। भारत सरकार के गाइडलाइन से कम वैक्सीन हमारे यहाँ खराब हुआ है, जिसमें 45 से ऊपर वाले में 0.6% है और 18 से 44 में शायद 0.8%।
Jharkhand's health ministry, on the other hand, says that the state's vaccine wastage is less than 5%.
हमारा वेस्टेज जो है 4.65% है और देश के दूसरे राज्यों से कहीं कम हमारा वेस्टेज है, लेकिन चूँकि न तथ्य हैं, ना कोई आधार हैं और ना उसके कोई इनके पास आंकड़े हैं और बिना आंकड़े, बिना तथ्य, बिना आधार के जो है झारखंड राज्य को बदनाम करने के लिए इस तरह का भ्रामक प्रचार किया है, जिसकी मैं कड़े शब्दों में निंदा करता हूँ।
As politics over the vaccine crisis continues, the Aam Aadmi and Aam Mahila continue to suffer. The wait for a protective shield against COVID is nowhere near an end. Bureau Report, India Today.
So here's what's very clear. India's vaccine drive through the month of May has floundered. Numbers have begun to go up, but just at the end of this month, on an average, and I want to show this on our screen to give our viewers a sense of what's at play. If you look at the overall comparison between the month of April and May, you will find that the number of people getting vaccinated on a daily basis is actually coming down. In the month of April, the number of people getting vaccinated on a daily basis was 29 lakhs. Now that's down to 19 lakhs, a gap of 10. So when it started, if you see, this is a 7-day rolling average, and we're looking at the percentage change over the last week. So for a long time, the number of people getting vaccinated was actually going up. Then suddenly, as we come into May, you see the numbers start to come down. This is the average vaccination on a 7-day basis. That number is coming down. It's just started to pick up right at the very end. I also want to show our viewers at this moment where the data lies on vaccination. I want to walk across to the Corona India dashboard to show you the overall figures as they exist, because first we have to establish that the month of May, from the perspective of India's vaccination program, has been a bit of a disaster. And just bear with me, zoom in as much as you can to the screen so you can pick up the story that I'm narrating to our viewers tonight. The yellow line right on top represents the total number of people vaccinated. The blue line represents those who've got one dose. The green line represents those who've got both doses. So first, if you see the blue line, there's been a big fall from March. It goes up in April. Towards the end of April, it starts coming down, 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 down. Right at the end, around where we are now, there is an uptick. Now, if you look at the green line, it is continuing to go down. What that essentially means is that we're now giving people the first dose of vaccination, hoping that we'll get the second dose later, ek to laga lo, so that you have some basic immunity, which is why double doses are continuing to show a downward trend. In the end, net, the total number of people vaccinated has started to go up, but a huge decline from where we were in April on the basis of the speed at which this program is going. So what we have in May is not good. Now who's to blame? You've got the BJP through the likes of Sambit, Patra saying the states have messed this up, that the center gave them freedom to go out and buy vaccines and they aren't doing a good job. On the other side, you've got the likes of Arvind Kejriwal who say, you know, this is like somebody asking Noida or Delhi in the middle of a nuclear holocaust, do you have your own nuclear shield? It's the central government's job, not that of the states. But the states asked for the freedom to buy. So to talk about all of this and more, we're joined on this broadcast representing the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, its spokesperson Gaurav Bhatia, squaring off against Gaurav tonight, representing the Congress Supriya Shrineth. From the Aam Aadmi Party, we have Atishi Marlena, we have Priyanka Chaturvedi from the Shiv Sena. So this is 3 versus 1. Gaurav, best of luck. I know the odds are stacked against you, but I will give you more opportunity to speak.
Just give me enough time, that's all I want.
I will give you enough time to speak, and I laid that out right at the top. I want to start by asking Supriya Shrineth first, because it's the opposition states that asked for the freedom to go out and buy vaccines themselves, and the Congress led that charge. But this should be democratized, that there is too much centralization, that the government at the center is the one taking the calls. Let us buy, we will do a better job. Now, the Modi government has given opposition rule states and other states the opportunity to go out and buy as they please. Now you're complaining that you don't like what's been done. Supriya Shrineth, opening comments, please.
Firstly, Rahul, a very good evening to the fellow panelists and all of you here. Firstly, I want to set the record straight. None of us, and I think 3 of us represent opposition states here, Delhi, and I represent the Congress, and Priyanka ji represents Maharashtra. I think none of us said give us the freedom to go and buy. What we said is give us the flexibility and then create the necessary ecosystem for us to procure vaccine. India is the only country in the world where the central government has thrown the ball in the courts of state governments, and we are seeing one vaccine manufacturer after the other actually putting up its hand and saying, we are not going to negotiate with you, we will talk to the central government. The central government on its part has not done enough to procure vaccination, other than creating a state's duopoly and very, very minuscule orders that were placed. I mean, we placed our first order in January 2021, and our first order was only 1.60 crore vaccine dosages. How are we planning to vaccinate our people? And is this any surprise that India, which was vaccinating close to 42 lakh people a day on the 5th of April, is vaccinating 17 lakh people today? And vaccination perhaps was going to be our best bet to ride over this crisis, because we are the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world.
Okay, so that, Gaurav Bhatia, ma'am, you've laid the foundation for this debate. I will come back to you, I promise. Gaurav Bhatia, Arvind Kejriwal made, in the context of war, a comment which I want you to respond to, which is to say that this is a war. It's not against China or Pakistan, it's a war against a virus. And in the middle of the war, the central government is asking Noida and Delhi, have you built your nuclear shield? If this is war, then it's the central government's responsibility to ensure that there is enough vaccination, rather than creating this bidding war between the states. They're all going to the same manufacturers and saying, hame do, hame do. This is not in India's larger interest.
Rahul, let us first deal with your question, and then I would also share some numbers with you, and the viewers would judge how efficiently the central government has handled the vaccination drive. But since the analogy of war has come up, I would like to ask you, in war, there is a centralized system. The commander gives an order and everybody follows. If the tanks are sent to the border, do you think any of the battalion or the soldiers they would say, हम इसका इस्तेमाल नहीं करेंगे क्योंकि ये तो बीजेपी का टैंक है? And I think there would be only one answer. ऐसा नहीं कह सकते हैं. Now, the clarity and strategy also needs to be very clear, taking forward the analogy of a war. Now, I heard the Congress spokesperson saying that हमने तो ऐसा कहा ही नहीं था कि decentralize करो. In my hand is the letter written by Rahul Gandhi, 8th of April, 2021. There are many things that I can point out as anomalies and, U-turns, but I would only read one line. Point number 6. And what does it say? And I am quoting. Give state governments a greater say in vaccine procurement and distribution. So that was done. Let us now not forget that 50% of the vaccine is still being procured by the central government. And what would the central government do with it? It would share it with the state government.
Okay.
And then it would be passed on to the citizens of the country. They will be protected. Similarly, even Arvind Kejriwal had made an appeal, and I will play that video later, where he says, please decentralize the entire process.
Oh, sure, he said that. So let me put that question to Atishi Madlena. Atishi,
just a second,
the Delhi government, in the press conference the BJP did today, the party claimed that the Delhi government has bought only 8 lakh vaccines so far from manufacturers, whereas private hospitals have procured over 9 lakh vaccines, to make the point that private hospitals in the capital seem to be doing a better job than your government in purchasing vaccines and making them available to its citizens. Atishi Madlena.
Rahul, the point raised by Gaurav Bhatia as to why when Delhi asked to decentralize, I am amazed at the deception that the central government carried out, because they said, very good, we will decentralize, you procure it on your own from the manufacturers. But they tied the hands of the manufacturers, and Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute gave us clear written letters saying we will only deliver vaccines whenever and wherever the central government asks us to. And today, they have topped up their first deception by a second deception by saying private hospitals ko to mil gaya. The answer to that question needs to be given by the BJP, by the central government, because they are the ones who are regulating whom Bharat Biotech sells to, whom the Serum Institute sells to. So Gaurav Bhatia and his party and the central government need to answer that why is it that Delhi government, which is doing free vaccination for the youth, does not have a single dose of the vaccine left for the youth. But private hospitals that are charging anywhere upwards of 1,000 rupees per dose, up to 1,400 rupees per dose, have vaccines that they have been able to buy from Bharat Biotech. What kind of regulation is this? What kind of collusion is this between the central government and these private hospitals and the manufacturers that they are not selling to states?
Okay, so you're accusing the government of being in collusion with the manufacturers. Before I give Gaurav an opportunity to respond, I'll get an opening comment from Priyanka Chaturvedi, because it's the state governments that asked for flexibility. You didn't want the Prime Minister and the BJP government at the center to dictate and determine policy. Now that freedom has been given, the opposition parties are continuing to complain, and the central government thinks that's terribly unfair. Priyanka.
No, what is unfair is the central government going on blaming the state governments for the vaccine policy. Please understand, like they keep comparing it to a war, Gaurav Bhatia was comparing it to a war. I would want to understand those who are, at the forefront of the war. If your army men come and tell you that we are running short of vaccines, please help us procure more, I would say, ammunition, would you just turn a blind eye to them? And would you just say that's your responsibility? You are supposed to win the war, but we will not provide you with the ammunition? So what the state governments have been stating and repeatedly stating is that we need more vaccines. We are running short of vaccines. What was the health minister saying? Health minister continues to say, oh, there is no shortage of vaccine. We will ensure that you all continue to get vaccines. What do they end up doing in the month of April? In the month of April, they wash their hands off and they introduce 3 prizes. they allow the pharma companies, the manufacturing companies, to introduce 3 different pricing for the state, for the center, and for the private hospitals for procurement. Now, obviously, when you've given the charge to pharma companies to sell, they will try and make profit as much as they want. So what they will do is they will choose to sell it to private hospitals because that is giving them more money. And that is why the state governments are left with no vaccines. Now, when you talk about global procurement, there is 1 second. Please allow me to complete, Gaurav. As far as the global procurement is concerned, the Central Health Ministry today came out with a myths and fact sheet. In that, they say, oh, we have been in talks with global vaccines since mid-2020. I would say any government which is talking will be able to perform in 2 ways. Either they procure these vaccines or they give them their EUA so that we can go and procure the vaccines. Nothing has happened. So since 2020, you have been not even building a stockpile. You go and order for vaccines in 2021, January, 1.6 crore of vaccines. Till now, you've only ordered 34 crore vaccines for a population of 100 crore, which is eligible for vaccination.
Okay, so you make an important point, Mr. Chaturvedi, and I want Gaurav Bhatia to respond to it. This difference between private parties going to the same manufacturers and the state government going to the same manufacturers. Now, let's assume that one of the top hospitals goes and says, I will pay you much more than the government of the Congress, the AAP or the Shiv Sena, sell me the vaccine. At this moment, the reality is that several of the private hospitals seem to have the vaccine and the state governments don't. What does that mean? Either it's your fault that you aren't dictating and determining where the vaccines are supplied, or it's the fault of the manufacturers, in which case you need to clamp down because naturally they are wanting to sell at a higher price to the private players rather than sell to the Thackeray government or the Congress government or the Kejriwal government. And in both cases, it's the BJP government that needs to respond, Mr. Bhatia.
So Rahul, here are some facts now. The constructive things that have been done by the central government without the support of the irresponsible opposition, if I may be allowed to say that. 20.5 crore doses of vaccine have been inoculated. This is the second fastest in the world. We all know the population of our country is around 135 crore.
But you're not answering my question, Mr. Bhatia. Can I ask you a very direct, straight question? Get you to answer it and then I'll come to more. At this moment, private hospitals, some of them seem to have vaccine supplies. State governments don't. Now, the reality is that private hospitals are paying more to the vaccine manufacturers than the state governments. So why is it that vaccine manufacturers are being allowed to sell at higher prices to these private hospitals rather than provide equitably to the state governments? Is that not vaccine inequity? Is that not unfair? Is that not benefiting the rich at the cost of the poor? Is that not something you should be acting against, Mr. Bhatia?
So Rahul, I hope I'll not be interrupted again because I wanted to also respond to what the AAP spokesperson said and my friend Priyanka has also said and made some allegations too, but I will answer your question first. First of all, Rahul, you also would admit that 50% of the vaccine is still being procured by the central government. It will be given to the state governments, and as of today, the state governments have 1.85 crore vaccines with them. Even the Delhi government that is alleging that there is a shortage has around 1.5 lakhs. And in the next 3 days, another 11 to 12 lakh vaccines will be provided to the state governments. Yes, in the long run, we need to augment our production capacity, and that is what the central government has done. I will tell you that by the end of December 2021, 200 crore vaccine vials will be produced in India and will be brought from other countries. Sputnik has already come. There would be production of Bharat Biotech also, which has a capacity of 1 crore per month right now. It would be augmented to 10 crores in the next 3-4 months. That shows clearly the government has the right intentions and a plan in place. But let me also raise this question. Look at the policy of the central government. Uttar Pradesh, with a population of 23 crores, got 1.7 crore vials, whereas Maharashtra, with half the population, got 2.13 crores. It shows that without discrimination, if the state needed vaccine, it was provided. But why did Congress party and others create vaccine hesitancy? Chhattisgarh, Punjab said we don't want co-vaccine. Now they're saying we want. So when you take U-turns, when you question
so you made
the central
multiple
government
points.
and
You
the
didn't
commander,
answer my question, and I just want to draw that out. But I will come back to you
I
later.
will answer it.
No, but you've spoken a lot. You haven't answered it.
If you feel, no, I can answer in 15 seconds. If you think part of your question is unanswered, I will answer it, Rahul. Give me 15, 20 seconds.
Okay, 20 seconds.
When you say, yes, when you say that, private hospitals are getting the vaccine, but the state governments are not, I've already answered your question, because the 50% procurement that is being made by the central government will trickle down to the state government. Second, if there are citizens of the country who do not want free vaccine and they can afford it, why shouldn't they get it? I think it is a shame that state governments, especially of the opposition-ruled states, have been ineffective to procure these vaccines, whereas private entities are showing that they are in a position to obtain these vials.
No, but what does that mean, Gaurav Bhatia? I don't understand what you're saying. No, sir, one second. It's not as if there's infinite demand, infinite supply of these vaccines. Atishi Marlena wants to come in. There are only two people who have the vaccine. One in left pocket, one in right pocket. Now, it depends on who they give it to. It's not as if there are 100 places. It's not a gold rush. Okay, let Atishi Marlena come in. Gaurav, you've spoken at length. Let's be fair. Let's give equal airtime. There's no inequity on this show. Atishi Marlena wants to come in and she wants to make the first point. The charge against your government and state governments is you aren't being efficient in the utilization of the vaccines, that wastage is very high, and that you aren't doing a good enough job, like the private hospitals, of going and procuring vaccines. Atishi Marlena first, please.
Rahul, I wish that the BJP spokesperson wouldn't come on air on primetime television and lie. I don't understand how he has the gall to say that state governments aren't being efficient when the vaccine manufacturers are clearly saying, and I'm quoting from a letter from Bharat Biotech, that we have received your letter of 7th May asking for an order of 67 lakh doses of Covaxin. However, we regret that we are not able to supply the vaccine because we are making dispatches as per the directive of concerned central government officials. And I'm quoting from this letter. Central government officials are deciding who gets how many doses of the vaccine, and Gaurav Bhatia and Sambit Patra.
What is the date of the letter?
This letter was written to Delhi government after we ordered the 67 lakh vaccines and asked to pay and said we can pay for it in advance. Okay? But they have the gall to come here on television and say, oh, Delhi government is being inefficient. You are not letting the vaccine manufacturers, the only 2 vaccines that you have approved in the country, you are not letting them sell as per their wishes. You are controlling the supply, and then you have the gall to say this at a time when the youth of the city, yes, we do have vaccine doses for, no, let me complete what I have to say. No, we do have vaccine doses for 45 plus, and even more vaccine doses than Gaurav said. He said we have 1.5 lakh doses. I'm telling you, Gaurav Bhatia, we have 2.86 lakh vaccine doses for 45 plus. Good. But today, the youth of Delhi does not have a single dose of vaccine available.
But our opposition parties, parties, Ms. Srinath, being unfair here. It's a simple equation of demand and supply. At this moment, the demand for inoculation is more than the supply. And no matter what the Modi government does, whether they use policy choice A, B or C, nothing that they can do at this moment till the time vaccine production is ramped up will be enough to meet current demand. And therefore, Gaurav Bhatia says, we're looking at the big picture, we're trying to ramp up production, we're trying to import as much as we can, get more manufacturers to produce, because that is the only solution. There's nothing wrong with the policy. It's just a simple mismatch between demand and supply.
But you don't do this in May 2021. You should have done this in May 2020 when the world was acting on it. In May 2020, you were so busy electioneering and doing everything else other than fighting COVID that you did not think about placing orders. You've created a state duopoly. I mean, you are talking about 1.x crore vaccines lying in the country. Let me just tell you, states like Maharashtra are jabbing 8 lakh people a day. Rajasthan, 14 lakh people a day. Delhi has yesterday jabbed almost 10 lakh people a day. Where is vaccine going to come from? So I'm not going to be benevolent and say the government can't do anything. When you created a state duopoly and Serum Institute can right now manufacture only 6 crore vaccine doses, can only ramp up by July and August. Same is the case with Covaxin. Sputnik itself, Dr. Reddy's lab and others can start ramping up only by July and August. Why were you telling WTO And here in the country, you would tell Supreme Court we cannot do compulsory licensing. Then you go back 5 weeks later and do the same thing.
Please?
This government was caught sleeping on the wheels. They've been caught napping, and when they could not control is when they told states, go and buy your own vaccination for population from 18 to 44. And the numbers tell a story. For all their false claims, there are 75 more countries that have vaccinated more people fully than India. India has vaccinated completely only 3.2% of its population.
No, but when our population is so big, no, I know lots of people, Priyanka Chaturvedi in the opposition are making this argument. Given the sheer size of the Indian population, as a percentage of the overall population, the numbers will always look small.
I should be allowed to respond, Rahul.
No,
I think that is the only fair way of conducting a debate. This is unfair.
Okay, Priyanka, 1 second. Priyanka, just 1 second.
You will definitely get your chance. All I'm saying is, yes, in absolute numbers, when we look at the vaccination numbers, yes, we are doing a great job. But when we look at the percentage of the population covered, it's miserable. And let's also be honest about the fact, when you said demand and supply, it's a demand-supply issue. This demand-supply issue would not have cropped up in the month of May if we had stockpiled enough vaccines to cover at least a 45+ population, which we do not have. And that is the sad truth. So my only point is, instead of going on harping about this, oh, we are ramping up vaccination, we are ramping up manufacturing. Yes, we are a manufacturing country, which is manufacturing vaccines. We should have been able to use that to ensure that we've covered one part of our population. 2, you haven't ensured that there's enough supply. 3, you've only given the approvals in the month of April. For the time for vaccines to come into India and for them to be able to cater to the people of this country is going to take some time. And you know what is the most worrisome part of this all? No country in the world, including America, which takes pride in its federal structure, has left the entire onus of buying vaccines to its state governments.
Okay.
What it has done is procure these vaccines.
That's an important point, and let Gaurav Bhatia respond. Even countries which are far more capitalist in their orientation than India is, are using central government might to purchase, to be the sole buyer so that they can hammer down and negotiate one best price. What you're doing at this moment, given the less number of manufacturers, goes against every tenet of economics. You don't give the seller the ability to price and push and decide who he wants to, because it's the central government that should be doing it. We're in the middle of a pandemic. This is not a movie ticket that we are buying, that you can price basis on who can afford to come and watch the movie and who can't.
Rahul, first of all, a fair discussion can only take place if you come to me every time there is an opposition party spokesperson who's alleging certain facts, and I need to respond to them. But yes, you have the prerogative to conduct the debate in the manner you think is proper. I have nothing to say on that. I'll respond to each one of them now. First, Atishi Marlena. I quite agree with you that it is the central government that should procure the vaccine for the entire country. And as I pointed out, the central government was doing that without discriminating. It was providing vaccines to the states that needed it the most. But then came the pressure from other political parties, and we did not actually get worked up, or we buckled under pressure. But at the same time, when they suggested that decentralize the process, still it was the wisdom of the central government on the basis of
but when has the Modi government started worrying about pressure from the opposition? This is a Mazboot Sarkar. Now if Priyanka Chaturvedi, Atishi and Supriya are heckling you, sledging against you, hassling you, why should you worry about their pressure?
Unfair. Rahul, it's not them that I am worried about, it's you I am worried about. That you are not allowing me to make my point.
Sir, I'm saying that why are you saying that we came under pressure from the opposition? You have such a big majority.
Have they ever listened to the opposition or the state?
Okay, let him speak, please. Let him speak, please. Let him speak. Yes.
You did not hear me. I said it's not as if we buckled under pressure. That is what I said. I think you didn't hear me properly. I am only saying that they have to take responsibility of their actions. If they demand something and partially it is done, keeping in mind their suggestions. Please, Rahul, this is a little unfair.
This is not fair. Let him speak, please. Allow him a full opportunity to speak. He was patient when everybody else was speaking. Go on, Gaurav.
Yes. So the point is very simple. that their suggestions came, we decided that it would be divided into 50% procurement by the center, which will flow to the state governments and then to the citizens, 25% by private entities and 25% by the state governments. Now, Rahul Gandhi and Arvind Kejriwal have taken a U-turn. That means they don't have clarity when it comes to recommendations. They indulge in petty politics. Second, when it comes to Maharashtra, let me tell you that it is the central government that has been providing maximum vaccination vials to Maharashtra because they needed the most. Uddhav Thackeray ji, as well as Sharad Pawar, they have praised the Prime Minister just like Arvind Kejriwal ji. What does it mean? It means the central government is doing its best, and definitely when you say it's a supply-demand issue, if it's a supply-demand issue for the state governments where they can't even procure any vaccine out of their 25% quota, how can you not put the same yardstick for the central government and then say that it's not a demand?
No, but let me put this question to you, Mr. Bhatia. When has this government ever listened to what the opposition wants? You do what you think is right. If Messrs. Gandhi, Kejriwal and Thackeray say, please jump off the cliff, we'd like you to jump off the cliff, we think it's a great idea, I'm sure you'll turn around and say, no, it's not a great idea because what you're saying makes no sense. You cannot have a situation where every state government is trying to outbid each other, outmuscle each other to try and get their hands on vaccines. Therefore, why don't you now admit that that pivot from central government purchasing to allowing states to purchase was a mistake? You can't blame the oppositions. In your wisdom, you took the wrong decision. That is the reality. Now you should turn back on it and reverse that decision because it patently was the wrong decision. You can't say I jumped into a cliff because the opposition said jump, jump, jump.
No, Rahul, you are saying that. I am not saying that. Let me make 2-3 quick points. First, any decision that is taken by the government is in the interest of the country and citizens. Second, it is based on the advice of experts. If the experts advise that yes, state governments can also be part of procurement, then that decision was taken. But does that preclude the central government from fulfilling its obligation towards the citizens? The answer is no. 50% is still being procured. And I would only say none of the channels have spoken about the vaccine hesitancy that was created by the governments of Chhattisgarh and Punjab. What about Arvind Kejriwal saying that we have ordered 1.34 crore vaccines, but later when they are asked to produce that, they don't come forward. So all that I'm saying is if a central government is accountable, so is the state government and the chief minister.
No, okay, let Supriya Srinath come in on this aspect of wastage. The central government has put out data to suggest, I got from senior sources in the government at the center, data which says that Jharkhand government, which is in part run by your party, wasted 37.3% of the doses, Chhattisgarh 30.2%, Tamil Nadu again where you're a partner 15.5%. Now these state governments are contesting this data, but that is what the CoWIN app is showing in terms of what's being sent, how much is being used and how much is being wasted. These are higher doses going waste in state run by the opposition than what the BJP states are doing. Supriya Srinath.
No, that's not true at all. And I think the clarification has already come in from the government, including the central government, that CoWIN did not refresh the data in time, and which is why those numbers are high. I will only say one thing, and I think that's been out in the public domain, so no contesting that. I will only say one thing. There is a myth buster that has been put out by the Modi government a little while back on vaccination, and it says we have been in talks with several players in the world. Either you are incompetent or you're ineffective or you're simply lying, because the rest of the world got their quota of vaccines and you in May 2021 is still talking. And you have only approved Sputnik in April. Pfizer was the first to approach you in December. It got out in February because your talks didn't carry forward. So let us please not lie to our people. We owe them at least basic transparency. That's all I will say. And what pressure? You don't listen to your own people. And now you're going to lie and, basically ठीकरा फोड़ने का काम मत करिए.
Okay, so I want final comments now from Priyanka Chaturvedi on the point that Gaurav Bhatia made, that the central government is not looking at this from a political lens, given the fact that caseload and deaths were highest in Maharashtra. The maximum amount of dosage was actually given to the state of Maharashtra, which is run by your parties, rather than being kept for Madhya Pradesh or Gujarat or Uttar Pradesh or one of the BJP ruled states. The central government is not looking at this politically.
Any logic or any person who is an expert will tell you that Maharashtra has managed data transparency. We haven't seen bodies lying on the ghats of Ganga or on any or floating around the lakes of Maharashtra. We have maintained data transparency, and we do not for 1 minute hesitate to say, yes, we saw a larger caseload as compared to rest of the country. We will not shy away from that because we understand how pandemic works, and we've got a team of experts and a health task force.
Rahul, I wish to respond.
Now, secondly, about getting maximum amount of vaccines. I must tell you, every expert would suggest that the area which is facing the highest amount of caseload should get the highest amount of vaccines, irrespective of your politics.
Exactly.
But their entire charge against Maharashtra has been that, look, they are wasting so much vaccine, and look, they are not vaccinating enough. We have vaccinated the highest.
No, Rahul, let me respond to that if I can have a minute,
and our vaccine
please.
wastage has been the most minimal. But yet they will continue to play politics. Every suggestion coming from Maharashtra is rejected by the health minister. Every positive feedback coming from the central, state government is rejected by the center. That is politics. Even today, the letter coming from the myth and fiction letter that has come for myth and facts letter that has come from the health ministry is nothing but a political hit out at opponents who have only given genuine feedback.
Okay,
and
so I'm out of time. I'm going to give Gaurav Atishi an opportunity to make a final comment. Then you can sum up. Then you'll be the last person to talk. Otherwise, after you speak, if Atishi speaks, then I have to come back to you. So in the interest of fairness, let Atishi go first and then I come back to you. You have the last word, Gaurav. Atishi.
Rahul, I agree with Gaurav that they have not discriminated against states. They have messed up equally in all states, whether it's ruled by the BJP or whether it's ruled by the opposition. There was no planning, there was no management. Yes, today the central government has pulled up its stocks, but now we are 6 months too late, and that is the problem. The manufacturing capacity being ramped up today needed to be done in January, but then the central government and all the BJP leadership was busy fighting elections in 5 states. And the reason we have lost so many lives in the second wave is because our people were not vaccinated. Yes, by December, we will have enough doses of the vaccine. But what if we had the third wave before that? The only answer is for the central government to pull its diplomatic muscle and make sure that vaccine manufacturers across the world who do have supplies and stockpiles do sell them to India, and then we can vaccinate at a much faster rate than we are doing.
So Gaurav Bhatia, the accusation is the government's impulses in this vaccine drive have been all wrong. That earlier you were too occupied with fighting and winning state elections, that what should have been done in January, February, March was not done, and therefore we are scrambling when people are dying. Final words, Gaurav Bhatia.
Thank you. I think the numbers would bear out the truth, and these are the numbers. When Priyanka Chaturvedi says that, they've done very well, we all know how the Vasuli Sarkar was operating. And even today, in the last 24 hours, there have been more than 1,000 unfortunate
When we
deaths.
don't have answers, we will go into a personal attack.
Rahul, this is not fair, I think.
When we don't have answers, I'm sorry. I didn't fall down to your level. I don't fall down to your level.
Numbers are so scary. Rahul, if you intervene, it would be nice.
I will intervene, but can I request that we focus? Because the moment you go down a Vasuli Sarkar route, she'll be forced to reject that charge, and then the whole conversation will get derailed. We've had a reasonably sensible conversation for the past 30 minutes. I'd like to end on a sensible note as well. Gaurav Bhatia, please conclude.
See, I would only say the central government is augmenting all the resources, and we will be able to inoculate every Indian very soon as per experts' advice. But at the same time, Maharashtra please, this is unfair, Rahul. Let me say this very clearly. This is unfair. What do they think they are? I've been so patient. The three of them were speaking. I just want to respond. Rahul, why can't
this
you
is not right.
Not done.
No, this is not fair. No, one second. No, one second. This is not fair. Priyanka Chaturvedi, Shukra Shrine. 1 second, ladies. If everyone speaks at the same time, the whole conversation degenerates very quickly. I don't want to let this fall to the standard of a banana republic. Let's try and talk sense. All of you are so smart that you can win by the power of your argument, as you've been trying. You've been poking, you've been teasing, you've been pushing Gaurav back. Do it through the power of your argument, not by letting this conversation degenerate. Sure. So let's keep Vasuli Sarkar out of it. We'll debate that another day. Gaurav Bhatia, please conclude, because I'm completely out of time.
Yes. So I just want to make my point that the numbers are, bringing out the truth. And in the last 24 hours, Maharashtra has seen 1,000 deaths. These are unfortunate deaths of our citizens. And 91,000. Why are they shouting?
Again a lie. I'm sorry, Rahul. He cannot get away with a lie.
This is unfair.
What 1,000 deaths is he talking about? Where does he get this number from?
For not being able to control the ladies. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet. You know, out of respect for you, I'll be quiet.
No, I can show you, one second. I can show you what the death figure is. No, 1 second. I can show you what the death figure for every state is. Where do I find it? Here we go. The death figure coming up on your screen right now for Maharashtra is 992. This is on the 27th of May, not for Mumbai. For Maharashtra, 992, Karnataka, 530, Tamil Nadu, 475, Uttar Pradesh, 193, Punjab, 185, Bengal, 153. But remember, there's also been, in some instances, accusations of severe undercounting of some of these figures. Here's the reality. We're in a situation where the vaccine draft isn't looking good, and that's something that we need to fix. And I want to end on a note of hope. If you look at this blue line, this is the line of those who've got a single dose. Right at the end, over the last few days, it's starting to go up again. It's starting to, shoot up quite sharply. It's much lower than where we were in April, but the graph is going up. So hopefully, as the next batch comes in, some of these numbers will start looking better than they are right now, because that's important for all of us and our lives, quite literally. Gaurav Bhatia, you were up against 3 opposition voices. You did well as best as you could. We tried to be as fair as possible. I want to thank Priyanka Chaturvedi, Atishi and Supriya Srinath for joining us on this broadcast. I will